That good?
Nah, no lipstick.
Okay. Welcome to episode 15, season 2, Light and Love. What's going on, baby?
I was literally anticipating because I just assumed that was a song. I was like, yep, another song I don't know.
You know what? It actually is the start of an Outkast song, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, let me not be too predictable today. I know people are expecting something. You know what my philosophy is? When people expect left, I give them right.
Keep them guessing.
And tonight, Los is expecting right, so I'm going to give her left. Okay? What's up, girl? How are you?
I'm good, Lozayas. How's it going?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. We had a good week this last week.
We did.
What was your highlight?
I think in my mind,
be honest,
fall has happened. The weather has not been reflecting it. I promised myself that I wanted to be a mom that was like present and passionate and purposeful with everything I did, just because.
All things that you are.
Yeah. Thanks, babe. Growing up, I had a great childhood, but, obviously my parents were like students and things like that. And so, attention was kind of split with the family. We had siblings kind of present for us, but I've always wanted to be that parent that's like very intentional with like each season changing and like kids experiencing different things. So I've been very intentional about creating a bucket list. I'll have to share about it, but Sayla and I ended up creating a bunch of things to do for fall. And then this past week, we made a hot apple cider in 95-degree weather. We painted pumpkins.
Very
we decorated for fall.
I gotta give you credit. You've been really killing that.
Thanks, babe.
Sayla actually woke up this morning and she pointed out the jar that you guys made with all the like cut out activities, and like it's like a jar where you pull out an activity out of it and they're all season appropriate. So Sayla was like, yeah, we're gonna pick another one out of the jar.
Yeah.
So she's super excited about it.
Yeah. So, that's what I'm doing. I'm pretty excited for fall. I wish the weather would change. I'm clearly wearing a sweater.
This is your favorite season. So here we are.
We made it.
Does it have anything to do with the fact that it's your birthday month?
Maybe. Shout out October babies. Yeah, we're the best.
Yeah.
Not biased, but yeah, we're pretty great.
Loza's turning 30. 24. Exactly.
A fresh, young, vibrant 34.
I was going to say 30 something, but I escaped my memory.
I'm about
24.
to be 34. I am at the ripe age of 34 when the intersections of God's faithfulness, I done lived some life. But I still got a lot of vitality. And I'm right at the cusp of seeing all that God's about to do. So,
yes.
Yeah, I'm excited for this birthday.
Talk to him. I love it.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm doing well, baby. I'm doing well. I'm feeling good. I'm looking good.
Okay.
I got my haircut after you shamed me last week. Shout out to Binu. Shout out to Binu. Doing well.
Good. Well, yeah, we're back for another episode. Here we are again.
Here we are.
We're halfway through the season, guys. I hope you guys have been enjoying it so far. Episode 5 of season 2, which is episode 15.
Halfway through the season.
Yeah, how does that feel?
How have you guys been, like, what's been the vibe? I mean, like, I feel like even amongst ourselves, there is kind of a difference between season 1 and season 2.
What do you think that is? What does it feel like for you? I
feel like we're kind of settling in to the podcast. I feel like we're finding a rhythm. I know one noticeable difference is, I think we touched on this at the very beginning of the season. We kind of came in with a plan at first, and then we quickly changed from kind of following a script for what we were going to talk about. We had like a 10 episode plan already, but then we kind of pivoted to like choosing to be prayerful about, okay, well, maybe, we're going to look to have God guide or instruct what each episode topic is going to be on the daily. So even today, we didn't really know exactly what we were going to talk about.
We were prayerful about it the week leading up to it.
Yeah, considering different things, but we weren't defined or set on it. We're always kind of open to just kind of going where we believe that God will lead us. And I think that's been a noticeable change. And I feel like I think we've both walked away from each episode feeling like, okay, well, this is a little uncomfortable to the extent that, this is not like a pre-programmed thing that we can neatly manicure and like control, kind of leaving it in God's hands in that way.
Yeah.
So.
And when you do that, it's kind of cool. I think we talked about it the first season, right? It's like you're doing it in faith. You're, what I believe, creating in faith conversations that revolve around topics that may or may not be discussed commonly in society, bringing the lens of faith and transparency to it. And then what you come to find is at the end of it, wow, like God really had something to say. Not only was it challenging to us, but hopefully it's challenging, inspiring, and encouraging through us to you guys. And I feel like this season already feels like one notch beneath the surface.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's something that is being changed and moved in all of us to like be transformed into, the person that God's called us to be. And so season 1 was fun. It was great. Yes. This season is feeling awfully depthy to me. So a
little more vulnerable. And you know what? To that extent, some of you have reached out to us on Facebook and in some of the reviews.
Instagram.
And we want to encourage you guys to continue doing that. Please just connect with us and let us know how you're feeling and the stuff that you want to hear us talk about. So.
Yeah, and how these episodes are like meeting you. If there's like anything you guys want us to specifically pray for you guys or continue to discuss. But we need more reviews, so keep them coming.
Speaking of reviews, who we got today?
There's one from an 80s baby TG that says, "Don't miss out. This is the most amazing podcast because this couple is definitely goals. Very kind. I'm very happy and thankful that this podcast exists, and it's something I look forward to. Please keep bringing the heat with the amazing topics. Looking forward to hear more about marriage and parenting."
Ooh, well, looks like you're in luck.
Asked. Yeah.
Looks like you're in luck. So this last week, we had a series of interesting conversations that came up with our daughter, Selah. She's 3 years old. Selah goes to this amazing Montessori school. It's not faith-based, but some great teachers there, some great kids there, and we love everything about it. But like, I think one of the interesting things about being a parent to a young child is just like the recap at the end of the day. And like, most times we ask, say like, well, how was your day? And, you kind of get like it was good. And, kind of stopping there. And then like part of our job as parents is to like act as detectives and kind of piece together little pieces from here and there and kind of like get a better sense of like what she's actually experiencing over the course of the day. And this last week, it was really interesting because somehow I don't even remember how it came up, but then like kind of in passing, she's like, I heard her use a word I had never heard her use before because we certainly weren't using it around the house. And she was talking about witches.
Yikes.
I said, witches? Well, happy Halloween, I guess, is the only thing you can say to that. Because I guess
no happy Halloween.
Well, not happy Halloween, but like I guess, in context of the fact that it's October and it is the Halloween season, you have to think, even though we're not really talking about Halloween at home at all, that's like something that's come up. So that was interesting because, funnily enough, this is a conversation we had been anticipating was going to come up, but we thought it was going to happen on our own terms.
And like in a year or two, a conversation about Halloween, which maybe was like aware of what was going on.
Aware, but clearly, they're very aware because in addition to talking about bringing up witches,
she mentioned haunted house.
She mentioned the word haunted house.
I'm
she
like,
mentioned ghosts.
Who I gotta talk to?
I'm like, oh my
I'm not prepared
goodness.
to
This child is
have
3 years old.
conversation about spiritual warfare with my 3-year-old.
So yeah, these are all things that came up, and I think it created an opportunity for us to kind of reflect on what are the things that we actually want to better instill in our kids, and what are the things that we value. And I think in thinking about that, it made us kind of take a step back and pull away from what the initial instinct, because I was looking at you when she first said that, and I saw Loza pause in her steps, and she was like,
Lord,
I heard her, I just
Spirit.
saw the wheels turning on Loza's eyes, and she was about to like make it a thing, and then I think we both made eye contact and be like, all right, let's just not overreact.
Witches?
No, we were more, we ultimately became more curious about it. I was like, oh,
Exactly.
what is that? Say, tell me more about that.
Word, yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think her response was like, oh, it's like someone who
Is on a broom.
rides a broom. And I was like, okay, oh, so what does that mean? But anyways, through that, we had to like revisit, what our approach for talking about things just at large that either we introduce directly or don't introduce directly, like in this case. Mm-hmm. And I think what we kind of revisited was that as opposed to trying to come up with a laundry list of things that we have to kind of cite and say, these are the things that we don't agree with, we don't believe in, or don't align with our values. Instead, we came to the understanding amongst ourselves that we would like to focus our attention more on clarifying the things that we stand for, and also kind of more important that equipping them to learn how to think for themselves.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing. So, we thought about it and you're like, let's definitely share on parenting because, excuse me, there's a tickle in my throat. But like the number one thing that, not just number one, but like one of the biggest things, you're right, we want to like share with our kids is the ability to critically think.
Yeah.
I think, I was not raised in a necessarily religious household. So like growing up, things weren't necessarily shoved down my throat on a religious sense, but I was also raised as a foreigner, and sometimes it's like, oh, we don't do this because I said so, and so without the explanation, I just kind of did it out of fear for the adults or for like the parental figure. And over time, obviously my parents kind of loosened up. They,
what do you mean by loosened up?
Loosened up in that they were a little less strict, and they were more able to explain to me more the reason behind their decisions. Excuse me, guys. That's the worst. Nobody ever talks about what do you do when you cough on a podcast.
Just keep it pushing. I don't know. They saw me sniffling all last episode.
Sorry, guys. You guys are saying clearly it's a real deal. Sneezing, coughing. But I was going to say, so yeah, they loosened up a little bit more in that they were able to explain to us the reasoning behind what they wanted to, have us focus on. And I think as my siblings and I, as we got older, that allowed it to be a scaffolding for the way that we led ourselves in college and how we like navigated the world. But initially when we were younger, it was just because I said so. So as we, traditionally that model makes me terrified because when you don't explain to a child or teach the child to critically think, you are doing the majority of like, you're chewing the food for them. They're not able to digest, process, and internalize, okay, how do I sift what is necessary for me? How do I sift through what's not necessary for me? And how do I navigate this world accordingly? Because as far as they're concerned, they're still left on this earth. And, it's how do we navigate it as believers? How do we navigate it through faith?
So you're saying there's something to be said about not just leading children in a way where we say, don't do this, don't do that, don't think this, don't think that. Mm-hmm. It's more about kind of helping them understand something holistically and then figuring out like what about that thing is inherently good, inherently bad, or maybe neither. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Because not everything is, just like you said, it's not always just good. It's not always just bad. For example, and I'll give you the context, maybe this applies for those like later in life, like not all rated R movies are just bad,
Right.
There are rated R movies that may be rated that way because of language, but the message may be inherently good.
Right.
So if you just shun that and say, okay, no rated R movies, no whatever, you limit a child's ability to say, okay, well, how do I learn to take things as they are without the presence of my parents, discern what is good and valuable to me and what I can use and what is not necessary, and move forward. How can I grow from that? How can I learn from that? And it's veering away from behavior adjustments to teaching your kids to be curious.
Of course, everything is age appropriate, and like the way you kind of deal with that will kind of evolve as the kids grow older and older. But I think why I feel passionate about this is that there's only so much we can control. Yeah. There's only so many variables that we can account for. And the reality is, while we'll continue to try to cultivate an environment in our home where we want to let both of our children know that they can always come to us with everything, I think the reality is most of the time they're going to spend is going to be outside of the house.
Correct, yeah.
There's no way that we can account for every single detail of the things that they're going to encounter. And this was just one example of that. So one of the most powerful things we can do for them is to help them understand why we believe in what we believe, and what we believe, and why we believe that. And also just to think about everything through that same kind of lens. Not only are we telling you this because you have to, but this is why. And I think that's an important thing that we've both tried to focus on. It's like, I think, and I catch myself all the time. It's sometimes, when Selah is so curious, and I think that's I'm really grateful for that. And sometimes my response to her does not honor the curiosity, because like something as simple as say like, go wash your hands. And she'll be like, but why, Dad? And I'm like, because I told you to wash your hands. But is the natural instinct when you kind of get tired about like having to over explain something that you would think is so simple. But I think there is something to cherish in over explaining everything, because in doing so, we're actually giving her the scaffolding for understanding how to process and to think through things. And I think even something as simple as that has implications in the way kids go on to think through things that they experience in every capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the same thing applies with our faith.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting as you're like using faith to be the infrastructure, right? It's also important not to use faith as something that you're like shoving down your kid's throat, because it makes it something that they don't want to use as a benchmarker or as a standard for them later as they get older.
What do you mean by that?
So like, if you grew up in a very religious household and your parents just made you do it because Jesus is watching, God is watching, don't do this, don't do that. And then you're kind of like explaining, oh, we don't do this because God is watching me. I have to be scared about these things.
No, all of a sudden God is a cosmic police.
And as you get older and you kind of move kids that like walk away from the faith, or adults that walk away from the faith because it's so rigid, then no longer have a standard from which to measure what is right, what is wrong. Then you're dealing with, morality and immorality. And then just things get a little bit more challenging for people to navigate what's right and wrong. And people just end up getting lost. So even the idea of using this standard in a way where you're presenting the faith and letting the child choose, that's
what does that
my favorite approach.
Can you like explain like an example of what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, the first example I have is most importantly a biblical example, and then even and then I can share more so for myself. But like the reason I think that that's the correct approach is, even if you look in the story of how like David is talking to his son Solomon, I think somewhere in Chronicles he tells him, to honor the God of his fathers, and he's talking about himself. So it's not even that. The fact that he identifies it as his own God, he's not saying, you need to serve this God, you need to do this. Like, he's saying, this is the God that I'm serving. And through the life that David led, Solomon learned. And later what we'll find is Solomon later identified the Lord, my God, and he labeled him as his own God as well. So it wasn't that David forced that on Solomon. Solomon came to discover the Lord for himself. And that's the only thing we can do as parents is like, yes, it really is discipleship at the end of the day. It's like you're discipling this kid, but not saying this is the only way, walk in it. It's to say, this is who we believe in. This is the way that Jesus lived his life. This is what we value about this man named Jesus. He was kind. He was considerate. He sacrificed. He was generous. And all of these things are things that we choose to model. But more than what we say to Selah, it's what we're modeling in actual physical actions, as well as the unspoken actions of our life.
I think that's interesting too, because it also puts the onus back on us. Because we talk that common saying about how, parents can say so much, but it's not just about what they say, it's about what they do, right? I think one thing that I've found to be so interesting as we are, trying to hold ourselves accountable as parents is how our children are absorbing everything on a molecular level, it feels like.
Totally.
And it comes across even to how, like, the way Selah moves her hands. Like she's literally subconsciously mimicking you in ways that you might not even be aware of. And I bring that up to say, even though, I think our primary responsibility is to like be clear about how we want to teach them to think and to be clear about the things that we stand for. I think it's also puts the responsibility on us to deal with the generational curses, the trauma, the things that we haven't fully resolved, because more than what we can say, it's the things that we're doing and demonstrating that are actually going to make probably an even bigger impact on what our children are doing.
Totally.
Right. So it's all the more reason to actually, I was just having this conversation with one of our friends today about how it's that verse in James, I think 1:20, let me actually look it up, 23 or 24. And it talks about how, here, let me find it. It says, for anyone who hears the word but does not carry it out is like a man who looks at his face in a mirror and after observing himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. I think it's all the more reason to be self-aware about our shortcomings, about who we are, but not just generating that self-awareness out of thin air, because how are you supposed to force yourself to be self-aware? It's by spending time in God's presence and using the word as a scaffolding for your life where you can really even know what standards you're living up to. And by doing so, it says, you could just be a hearer, but the one that's a doer is the one who does not just carry out by looking in the mirror, but he observes himself and he does what he's supposed to do without walking away with it, without being impacted, right? So, I think it's just that much more important for us to be self-aware enough to hold ourselves to a standard so that our kids can, have the right model to follow after that, right?
Yeah. I think the example that I saw of that is a lot of parents will say, do as I say and not as I do.
That's exactly what I was trying to say earlier. I couldn't figure out the phrasing.
Yeah. Do as I say and not as I do. And I think that's
so short-sighted.
It's terrible. Like, that's terrible. One, because you're saying, I'm not modeling it for you, but, just do it because I said so.
How convincing.
You know what I mean? But even in modeling, I think it goes a little deeper, because it's not just what you want to physically like model. Kids also pick up on, and as you said, the molecular level, like nuances that you don't even realize you're exuding. And when you see it portrayed through your kids, it makes you have to face and address yourself. So one example I can give is like something as like, I naturally am learning more and more how much of an anxious person I am. And I haven't quite figured out the original like root of that, right? And it could be something that I also learned from a mom who was a worrier, who also had a mom potentially who was a worrier. And I don't know how far back it goes, and I haven't like really asked or inquired much of my family on that. But the reason I'm learning about my anxiety, for those of you guys that have been tracking with us, I had shared like once in therapy, I learned that like my control issues are coming from a place of being anxious because I'm fearful about different outcomes. So it's my anxiety that makes me kind of control certain environments. And so I found myself like every day before, we go to school, anytime I step out of the car or step out of the house, when I'm in the car, I will always like cover the car in prayer, cover my drive in prayer, cover it by the blood of Jesus, and it makes me feel better. That's why I pray, is that I feel like I'm relinquishing that control back to the Lord. And I don't think anything of that, keep us safe. Sayla's clearly in the car hearing me and, processing and observing. So I think one time she was talking to her aunt and she was like, oh, I hope you have a good day. Don't get in an accident. And then when I heard her say that to her, I was like, bro, what?
Where did that come from?
Where did it come from? Like, why is she like worried about her aunt getting in an accident? And what I didn't realize is she's subconsciously receiving and absorbing my anxiety. And I'm not saying like I shouldn't be praying about it, but it made me have to question for myself, are there other areas in my life where my anxiety is seeping into the way that I'm moving and operating, and why am I not addressing that? And I think it's kind of led me into the space of wanting to be a healthier version of myself, because I'm reproducing someone that's mimicking and copying and navigating this world as a me,
I will
with
say,
their own like learning lessons.
I will say having kids just makes me that much more conscious about how I carry myself and bring myself to the world, because even though they're still so young, I can already see how the decisions that we're making and the things that we choose to not deal with now is going to bear fruit in one way, shape, or form in the future,
definitely.
whether we believe it, see it, or not. So I think it's that much more pressing for us to look in the mirror and to say, what are the things that we can, continue to work on so that we can be better for ourselves, but also for our children.
Do you feel like people have to be in a particular mind state or say, oh, I'm healthy, now I can have kids? Or do you think that in that conversation about preparing for children, do you have to be in your healthiest place to do that? Or
I mean, that's a really good question. I think for the person who's self-aware to say, hey, there are these things that I have going on and I want to work through them, I don't really feel like there's a problem with that. But I think on the flip side, the reality is we're all works in progress. And what I would say is if you are connected to the source and you're saying, hey, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm willing to, submit my life to God's word, and I'm going to constantly work towards, reflecting the image that he set for me, then I think that's the best example, because we don't have to be perfect people in order to, have children and to live a meaningful life. I think if anything, the most impactful example is to recognize that we're all people who are still works in progress, and to show our kids how, despite our own shortcomings, we're still all working towards being the best versions of ourselves, because we are aligned to a Savior who's here to help all of us, to save all of us. Because we're never going to come to a place where we're perfect. That's a lie in and of itself. So yeah, to your question, I think the answer is yeah. You don't have to be perfect, but maybe some people are, just serious about the work they have to do in order to bring children into the world. And I think that's a good thing too.
Yeah. I think it's okay. Yeah. I agree. Totally agree with that. In that we aren't perfect. Therefore, at any point in time, I think, if God blesses you with the opportunity to be a parent, it's a high calling. It's a special gift that God has given you. And, the work, it puts a greater onus on you to also do and bring your best to the table, and that you're willing to look within yourself, right?
Right.
And you're willing to say, okay, God, search me and create in me a clean heart. If there's anything that's not right within me, bring it to the surface. And I think it's okay for kids to see that process.
I think that's essential, because what are we telling our kids if we're not saying that? We're saying that you have to be
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Which doesn't exist, because that actually sets them up for failure later.
And I actually think, speaking to what we were saying earlier, I actually think what you're describing aligns right alongside with what we were saying about teaching our kids how to process and think critically. Because I think in the same way, when they experience any different iteration of whatever problem, we want to give them the tools to deal with it and to work through it. And I think what you're alluding to even here is kind of exactly like that. It's like whatever problem they're going to endure or experience later on in their life, we want them to have the scaffolding to say, this is something that I can work towards in a meaningful way, because I know I have a God who has forgiven me, who loves me, and the word gives me a template for how to, look back at myself and work towards it in the right way.
Yeah.
So, I think if we were ever to say that we're looking for perfect kids or perfect people, then I think that's just not even something that's even, realistic.
Yeah. I think traditionally parents would have done that, though, is not show their weaker side, or not show that because you think you're protecting your kid, right?
Think about how we grew up.
That's what I'm saying. But even in that, the reality is
that's really interesting.
In showing them the brokenness, which that's something I feel like God's really challenged and convicted me of too, is it's important for her to see humanity lived out through the lens of faith in her mother. What is a woman who knows how to apologize to her daughter if I raise my voice, or if, within appropriate context, right? It's I'm not always right. I do mess up. I don't always get it, spot on. But what you will find in me is a woman who acknowledges that she doesn't always get it right. You'll find a woman that seeks the Lord in all things, a woman that struggles, a woman that strives, a woman that's willing to work. And that is the model that I want to give to her. And I think trying to protect our kids from experiencing reality will really set them up and cripple them from being able to navigate reality once they get older, you know? But it's teaching them, one, their humanity, but also the power of their faith. And then all the resources next to them that they can use, like therapy, you know, good community, love, to become the best version of themselves, you know? That's what I feel like it means to like give them the best of you and to work away from traumas that you know are affecting you but have never addressed, because you owe it to them and their generation, because God has called them for such a time as this, you know?
That's really interesting. I think in hearing you say that, like I just started thinking about people who we've known and like, you know, just stories you hear about people who, because I feel like low key, everyone grew up with some kind of religious experience. Like a lot of people. Like a lot of people were exposed to it in one way, shape, or form, but like they had enough exposure to determine for themselves that it wasn't for them. And I think a large reason for that is because they realized that there was just so much inauthenticity or like hypocrisy or things that did not like ring true to them. And I think part of the reason why it didn't ring true or hasn't rung true is because they never really saw authentic examples, kind of like what you're describing. So if you're a parent who's saying, oh, we are people who believe in God and this is what we stand for, but then you can't even like apologize and acknowledge with a certain degree of humility that you were wrong, how does that like reconcile to the thing that we say we believe? So I think it's not even that always that deep. Sometimes it's just as simple as doing the simple things right and being like honest and sincere and genuine about them, because I think a lot of times maybe that's where you find God, you know? And that's in and of itself something simple and easy enough for kids to see, well, that is hard, that is difficult, but I saw an example of that modeled for me, which, you know, resonates as true. So I think there's something to that. To like humble yourself enough, even with your kids, you know? I think especially coming from like a immigrant background, like the hierarchy structure is to put kids at such they're like at the bottom of the totem pole doesn't even describe it. I think if there's a level below that, it's just like
not these right.
Yeah, man. It's just like if they were lucky to make it to the function, man. Are they even here? I don't even know.
Yeah.
You know, so like to kind of reframe that and to like really give dignity and honor to the kids by like acknowledging them and recognizing that the best way to empower you is to, you know, to communicate and even think about you. Get out of here. Is to communicate or think through what we're saying in a way where we want to just speak it through to you in a, like honestly and sincerely, because we value our kids, you know? And this kind of goes back to what we were saying about modeling too.
Yeah. What is that statement that says like, this is how you share the gospel. You share the gospel with, what is it? How does it go?
Oh, not with your, you
the best way to share the gospel
is through
do it without
your action, but without words.
We're totally butchering that. It's something about share the gospel.
Bing bong. Yeah.
No, here it is. Share the gospel, and if you must, use words.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you, Lord.
Got him.
But yeah, so I think, with children, I think that bit, I think if you can view them as not just kids and as adults, I think that was a game changer for me too, growing when my sisters would visit. They're like, you talk so much to Selah. She's like, literally doesn't even say words and you're just changing her diaper. But the idea of like having these conversations and giving these kids dignity and talking to them and like serving them and like pouring into them, it's like you're discipling this person. And before you know it, everything is being absorbed. Everything is. And I think it's as you do that, you'll see that they become a person with thoughts and opinions. And
I want to give credit to like our generation. My sense is that people from our generation, millennials, etc., they kind of understand that a little more than the previous generation because maybe from, you know, trying to
also a luxury.
Yeah, well, maybe either because there's just more information out here, or maybe you are trying to give to your kids what you didn't have in a sense. But I think the next generation of kids are going to be better off for it. But I do think it really does feed what we were talking about earlier in terms of them being able to think and process because they're experiencing it, and we're giving them enough dignity to like, you know, communicate with them in a way where, we put the tools in their hands.
Exactly.
As opposed to saying, this is what we do, take it or leave it. I can understand the allure of that because, like, especially in some cultures, you're like, okay, well, this is what we stand for, and you just got to hold on to this, and that's what it is. And there is something powerful about that. But if we want to empower these kids to thrive in different environments, I think we have to teach them how to think through and why.
Yeah.
What and why.
Yeah. I will add on to that, though. I do think that it is a luxury that we get because we have the luxury of a warm home, functioning water. We're not just worried about the needs of our children the way that our parents were, right? Coming to a new country, navigating and doing a lot of these things. So, like, praise God for their shoulders because we're now able to serve and, like, function from this place.
Let me not sound too out of touch right now. Hey, shout out to all the immigrant parents that brought us here through all the adversity.
And even for parents that were here, parents that had gone through, like, the Great Depression. So their biggest concern is, like, worrying about, like, making sure that their kids' needs are met and getting stability. And so I just think that, every need is going to look different. But as for us in this time and in this period, and with the
household,
and with these resources that God has given us, I do think that there is a call to instill in our children creativity and the ability to think in a day and age where there's so much information, and teaching them to, like, filter and process and learn also through our example and through the skill of being able to navigate for themselves using critical thinking is the best thing that we can do for them.
So, as I said, everything is age appropriate. And, like, circling back to this conversation of witches that we started off with.
We need to tell you how that ended.
So first thing we did was we just kind of, like, teased out the conversation. She just kind of shared little bits and pieces because for her it was just, like, kind of light, but we were really just trying to figure out what was going on.
Did she understand good and evil? There
were just so many questions.
Jesus,
I mean, obviously it was very innocent, but you can understand, like, for us, it was like, okay, well, look, witches, we don't have to get into depth with, like, what this is all about, but, like, I frankly I don't care if it's light or not. I don't really like the idea of my child going on about witches because it's like, even though there's, like, a version of it where it seems harmless, I'm like, we also kind of know what that stuff's really about,
Yeah.
And that's got kind of part of the challenge with all this because, like, I know, like, whatever context that she experienced, it was very,
she's just on a broom.
She's just on a broom. It's not that deep. But at the same time, I'm like, in wanting to have, like, sincere, thorough conversations, we know that it's like it is deeper than that, So the next day, I talked to I just kind of.
But just to piggyback. Yeah. So that night we talked about, we like to focus on things that are, like, light-filled and lovely and things that make us happy and smiling and things that aren't scary. And sometimes witches have the capacity to be scary.
And she's like, I don't like things that are scary.
Yeah. And then that's kind of where we left the conversation, because obviously, you can't.
And then when we were talking about the things that we do like that are happy and good, she's like my stickers. I was like, yes, exactly. Like your stickers. But the next day, just to, like, get more context, I talked to her teacher and I was like, hey, she mentioned this. I know it's, like, October and, like, is there, like, a curriculum with Halloween? And she's like, no. But, like, in their little library, they do have different books. And one of the books was apparently a well-known book, which talks about a witch on a broom. And it was just as simple as that. So, but it's really interesting to think about the things that kids, like, latch onto. Maybe because she's never really heard that word here.
Yeah, dude. One time
I heard a new word.
She saw our neighbor's decor and it was a ghost. And she's like, Mom, what is that? A marshmallow?
Trying to describe it. It was so funny.
Yeah. Like, we're not talking about
I knew exactly what she was trying to describe. And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But again, like, just thinking about, not because the point of this is not to say, oh no, we don't do this, don't talk about this, because the reality is this is like, and this is like far exceeds Halloween. Mm-hmm. It is just about, like, the world that she's going to continue to experience, even things that we're not going to know about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we'll have better not expertise, but thankfully we're learning through Sailor, so we'll be prepared also for Christian. You know what I mean?
So, but yeah, that was interesting. So my question to you, Loza, is, now that we've kind of unpacked some of this, and I know you've had some different feelings about this. Lozo, what is your feeling about Selah dressing up for Halloween at school?
Not him asking me this in public because he knows that I think Halloween is of the devil. Yeah, so I mean, it's a nuanced conversation. I definitely was.
You guys feel Loza just burned me with her eyes right now? I told you I was going left tonight.
Well,
okay, let me give you my thought first, and then you can tack on. How about that?
Sure, it doesn't matter. I'm willing to answer either way.
Okay. Okay. So, do you?
Do I go?
I was trying to throw you a life raft.
Go ahead.
I think so. Like the initial conversation that we were having, because we were supposed to have like an episode about like what our stance on Halloween was, because initially Loza was very like not even willing to entertain anything associated with it.
Get it out of my house.
And my point was, I think it's clear between the two of us, we don't celebrate Halloween. Like that's not, I don't think it was even like a thing that was even on the radar. That was never a thing for you guys, right? Growing up?
No, but more from a strict parent.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
household.
And for us, like we grew up, I grew up in a religious home. So like it was never something that we did either. But even as I've like come to grow on my own, it's very like evident that while, we look at it by and large as like a very harmless, meaningless cultural phenomenon, I think at the core of it, the tenets of Halloween itself are not things that align with our values, and that's fine. But I think there's room for nuance in this conversation, which is kind of the point that we were having, conversation that we were having, which was I didn't see any issue with Selah or our kids potentially dressing up as positive, light, happy things for the purpose of not making them feel excluded, not being in direct support of celebrating Halloween, but just to say, I think there's a way in which kids could dress up, but then not, celebrate in all the darkness of everything related to the season. So all that being said, I think kind of we've arrived at a place where I think you seem to agree with that to some extent, or what's your take? You tell me.
Yeah, I definitely was having a hard time with the entire holiday. I'm like, I think we have to be.
Tell us why.
We have to be very careful as like Christians living in the modern day. Just because something is like culturally or socially acceptable doesn't mean we have to participate or we have to do it. My stance was like, clearly the history of this thing is like rooted in things that are demonic. You're dealing with the afterlife. You're dealing with things of death. Like, for what? Like, why would we even touch that? We talk about things that are honorable, noble, lovely, pure, true, praiseworthy things, and we're talking about death and like the idea that still to this day there's an air of spooky and supernatural and dark to me is, and then that it's masked and making it quote unquote kid friendly, and like these costumes are done and jack-o'-lanterns and candy, like all these things that are appealing. I'm like, it's so woven into the fabric of our culture that we can't even sift through what is something that has the capacity to be very spiritually dark, because we're busy playing for fun, kicks and giggles up top. And I think that was a deep conviction of mine. And I think, everybody's conviction is going to be different. The challenge for us was that the convictions were different in one household.
Yeah.
And then we were like, well, what do we do?
But conviction wasn't different in terms of how we felt about Halloween. I think we're in agreement about that.
It was about the dressing up.
The dressing up, just because my point was, I don't feel like there's anything inherently wrong or evil about dressing up, especially if what the kids are dressing up as is not
positive or light.
Yeah, it's not.
So
and especially if, like, for example, at her school, the reason why she would even be in a position where she would dress up is because they have something called trunk or treat, where parents bring candy and they put them in their trunks. All the kids are dressed up, and that's that. It's not an explicit celebration of Halloween. It's nothing spooky. It's nothing dark, and that's that. And I think there's a way in which kids can meaningfully participate, because the devil don't have a lock on dressing up as positive things or light things. And I think it was more meaningful for me to say she can exist in that space. We can continue to speak on what our beliefs are, what we stand for. And as she continues to grow older, we can communicate what we believe is not aligned with our values. And then she can make those decisions for herself as she becomes more mature, as long as she knows this is something that is not aligned with necessarily what we believe.
Yeah. And the only, and I'll get to what you were saying, but I think the reason I had originally disagreed was, obviously the history behind why people dress up was to ward off spirit. So you would dress in an attire that was scarier than these spirits, to scare the spirits away. So the messaging behind dressing up has always kind of seemed dark. And so again, to make it palatable to us, and I believe in the US, we're just obsessed with the notion of like death, violence, like dark things. People get everybody loves Halloween, but it's just like so crazy to me.
But I'm not even talking about Halloween.
I know. So going back to the dressing up, that's an integral part of this holiday. So I'm like, well, why are we even participating? Just because we want to be included with society?
Not in Halloween itself. This is a trunk or treat.
I'm talking about the dressing up part. And I had a hard time with that.
There's nothing, but what's wrong with that inherently?
And you're right. I think when it comes to like dressing up for holidays at large, or dressing up for the holiday and dressing up as something like light and fun, that's a great idea, but does it have to fall on Halloween? Like, yeah, of course, the devil doesn't have a luck on costumes. Let's have costume party November 1st. But we're doing it again. This is like a long, ongoing debate, but what we came to agree on, especially because Selah brought it up before I was ready. I was like, I haven't finalized my debate. I'm not ready.
I wasn't ready for this conversation either. I think I overheard you guys talking about it in the kitchen, and then she sent her over to me. She's like, "Go talk to your dad." I'm like, "What's going on right now?"
Yeah. So I think what we came to understand, and what I decided was, I do agree that maybe the feeling of isolation has the capacity to overshadow her ability to cognitively reason for herself. And for that sheer fact alone, again, reemphasizing, we care about things that are honorable, noble, lovely, pure, and true. So as long as we're able to exude those things, whether you attend this event to like collect candy or not, that's fine. As she gets older, obviously the conversation will grow to more levels of depth where we talk about the history behind it, the culture behind it.
The implications will be different then, because then when she's older, the opportunity she'll have will be for more explicitly Halloween related events.
And not only that, but I'm just saying as she gets older, you're explaining the history behind it, but beyond the history, also in corroboration with hopefully a growing understanding of the gospel and faith, she can mesh the two of those and make a decision for herself how she wants to move forward. And that's kind of my goal.
And that's kind of what we were...
Raise up a little bird.
Yes, and that's kind of like the point that we were talking about earlier, is like giving her the tools to like process through and understand the entirety of what we're working with, chewing it up, taking in the things that she can hold on to for herself. Correct. And then spitting out the rest of it, right?
Exactly. Not just because we said so.
Exactly.
Right. So that's the full circle moment, guys.
Yeah. So yeah, still processing and experiencing that in real time.
As you guys can see.
We'll keep you posted. This is like everything that we've been doing, I feel like is just kind of giving you a glimpse of things that are happening in real time. So if our opinions change, if our realizations evolve along the way, we'll make sure to let you know.
Yeah.
And that's our story.
That part. So thank you guys for tuning in.
Yes.
And as you guys know, our sponsor for the week is Tedros Team.
Hey.
So we're a real estate company in LA, helping you buy, sell, if you want to invest, or for anybody looking to relocate, come see us.
Yep.
But what we did want to share was we have a newsletter actually that I feel like has been offering a lot of like valuable insight into like the trends, neighborhoods to look out for, and areas to, keep an eye on, and then real estate related news,
market analytics,
things that you should just be aware of if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest. Grow in wealth over the next couple of years, next 5 to 10 years even. Shoot us your email and we can get you signed up for that.
What's the best way for them to shoot you the email?
You can actually go on to any of our Instagram handles.
Okay.
At Tedros Team is probably the best place, and then you can just click on the bio and you can subscribe there. That'll be THEODROS Team. And so go there. And if not, I'll also include the link at the bottom of this video on YouTube and on the show notes. So go ahead and follow along with us also on our individual.
Also, shout out to some more folks who contributed to our donor box.
We're almost there. We're
there
ready
are
for a new
people who
camera.
believe, and we're getting there slowly but surely. So thank you to all of you who believe in the vision, who believe in what we're doing, and who want to see us continue to grow. We're in this. We're just kind of going on for the ride. So thank you guys for believing.
Yeah, love you guys, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Peace.
See ya.